Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you all for joining us today for this live stream event. My name is Adbena, and I'm the program manager of the Microsoft Reactor San Francisco. I will be sharing session resources with you in the chat, but before we begin, I would like to quickly review two items with you: our code of conduct and our event guidelines. First, please take a moment to review our code of conduct. Microsoft Reactor seeks to provide a respectful environment for both our audience and presenters. We do encourage engagement in the chat, but please be mindful of your commentary, remain professional and on topic. And secondly, our event guidelines. This session is being recorded and will be available on demand through the Microsoft Reactor YouTube channel in about 24 to 48 hours. Let's start our session today, which I'm going to bring up Bob German, Rabia Williams, and Gary Trinder. Hello.
Hi there. Hi, everyone. Hello. I think Gary's having an internet bandwidth challenge today. It sounds like they're doing some work in your neighborhood. And so I guess your camera's not on, Gary?
That is true. Yeah, you'll just have to listen to my voice and just imagine what I look like.
No worries. And hi, Rabia. Rabia, you're all the way in Brisbane, Australia.
That's right. It's 1 a.m. at the moment, and I'm praying to God that I don't sleep. But I won't. It's an exciting event, isn't it?
Well, that's great. So Gary and Rabia and I are on the developer advocacy team, and want to welcome you all to this Microsoft Teams App Camp. Why don't we go ahead and get started? This App Camp event is really intended for Azure developers and people who have built on Microsoft Azure. And if we could share the screen, that'd be great. So today we're really all about extending an Azure solution to Microsoft Teams. A lot of people may not realize that Teams was designed to kind of allow the apps that are already out there to be reused or adapted for Teams. You don't have to start everything from scratch. And that's really the theme of today's broadcast, is because you may already have an Azure solution and you might want to kind of add the Teams audience and all of the capabilities of Teams to your solution. So there's a lot of reasons. Teams is an application platform. Some of our partners have reported a large uptick in demand for their apps by adding them to Teams. We've seen a factor of 10 increase in application usage over the last couple of years. And because you can meet and chat and call and collaborate in Teams, you don't have to reinvent those things in your app. You don't have to kind of deal with the compliance issues and the privacy issues that go with handling all that data. Your customers may already have adopted Microsoft Teams as a solution. In fact, we had to change the slide, and it used to be we had 280 million monthly active users, and yesterday on the earnings call, they said that it was up to 300 million. So that's your potential marketplace. And as I said, we've seen a lot of our partners benefit from this. So I'm not going to kind of go too far on the business side of it, but I think some scenarios that you might want to think about for Teams apps. A lot of information workers just live inside of Teams, and maybe they want to be able to share and discuss and work together in the context of your app. Maybe what they'd like to be able to do is have use the mobile client for Teams, which also supports your app, and have sort of a one-stop shop where people can collaborate It works great for frontline workers where maybe they don't have a computer, but they have their phone, and everything is right there in Teams in a kind of a more regulated environment. So let's look at the architecture just a little bit and why it's possible to reuse apps in Teams. And then we'll dig into App Camp, some samples, and how you can actually get started with this yourself. So Microsoft Teams itself is kind of a facade on top of all of Microsoft 365. So as you probably know, there's a desktop client, there's a web client, there's iOS and Android mobile clients. They all sit on top of a set of services that you can access as well that are inside of Microsoft 365. Your app doesn't actually run in Teams. It kind of appears in Teams. And here's some of the things you can build: tabs, bots, message extensions. We'll show examples of some of these. But the thing is that your app could actually be hosted anywhere on the internet. We'd love it if it's in Azure. That's an easy yes, but it could be anywhere. A lot of our partners host elsewhere, and it's not a problem. All you need to do is host, your tabs are just web pages, and bots, message extensions are just web services. You host them where you want, and then you create this little file called a manifest that tells Teams, hey, there's a tab over here and there's a bot over there, and it stitches everything together. And then if you want to get at those same backend services, which is highly recommended, and I'll show an example at some point, you use the Microsoft Graph. And then, you can get to, based on the permissions that your user or the admin grants you, you can get to the user's files, emails, contacts list, to-do list, calendar, so that you can make a better experience for the user. That, for instance, you're not asking them, when are you available? You can just say, it looks like you're available at this time. Is that okay? Right? And save them steps by using the Microsoft Graph. So this picture shows all the different capabilities of a Teams app. And we're going to kind of go through them over the course of the hour. But these are all things that you can point to. Either some of them are declared in the manifest, like tabs and dialogues, which are just really modal dialogues, sometimes called task modules. Those are going to run in embedded web pages. And bots and message extensions, those are web services that use the Azure bot channel service. So the web service doesn't have to run in Azure, but the bot channel service, which is a very inexpensive, simple service that relays messages, are used for these features. And just go into the manifest and tell Teams where these things are, and you're off to the races. Other features you'll access through your code, such as proactively popping up a task module or a dialogue, or showing an adaptive card, or calling the Microsoft Graph. Very important stuff. It's something that you would add to your code using our SDKs. Now, this picture kind of shows the whole landscape of how to build a Teams app. And so there's a lot of alternatives here, right? And we see a lot of partners and customers building using all these different technologies. But I think, I'm just going to kind of go through one at a time to make it a little bit clearer. The first way to build a Teams app really is to use the Power Platform. And the Power Platform is a great way to go if you want to build for one enterprise. These are single tenant apps. There's no way to really host one version of the app for thousands of customers. But it works really well as a rapid application development environment inside of a company. And so that's kind of like the first option. The second option I'll list is Teams Toolkit. And Gary's going to show us a sample of that. It's a great way to build an app quickly. There's versions for Visual Studio Code and Visual Studio, and you can just deploy your app directly to Azure from there, and it's much faster and easier than other approaches. However, you kind of have to be starting something new, because Teams Toolkit generates a certain structure, as many tools do, and if you already have an app, Teams Toolkit is currently not probably the option for you. The next one is the Yo Teams generator. This has been around longer. It's mature, it's robust, it's really fine product from our community. And so you'll see a lot of samples out there with Yo Teams, and it's still a valid approach to starting your app. And then there's the SharePoint framework. So it turns out that SharePoint web parts can appear in the Teams app. So that's an option as well. And then, of course, this is an App Camp session. So I'm going to talk about App Camp. App Camp is about extending an existing app. So it's really about, I already have an app. I don't want to start again. Maybe I've already got a lot of people using the app. I don't want to maintain 2 apps. I just want the app to show up in Teams. And I want to start taking advantage of some of the richer collaboration features by just adding some features to my app and not having to support 2 entire, app structures. So that's really, kind of the options. And we're going to go into a couple of them today. What I'd like to do now is ask Gary to get to join us and show us an example of the Teams Toolkit and how that can work for your app and deploy it into Azure very easily and quickly.
Thanks, Bob. So as Bob's already mentioned, there's lots of different approaches that you can take to develop apps for Microsoft Teams. And Teams Toolkit is one of those approaches that you can use. And actually, Teams Toolkit is one of my favorites. It's the easiest way to get started building apps for Teams. And over the next 10 minutes, I'm going to show you how Teams Toolkit makes it easy for you not to just develop on your local machine and build awesome apps, but then get it into the hands of end users by giving you features to deploy that app to Azure and also publish your app to your Teams organizational store or even the App Store itself. So let's take a look at those 3 features. The first feature is called provision, and that's provisioning to the cloud. And this feature, what it does is this will help you create the resources that are needed for your app to run. So say, for example, you've built a tab, but you need some kind of a web hosting to host your HTML files, or if it's a bot, you might need an Azure bot service as well. And these need to be provisioned into Azure, into your subscription. So this kind of deals with, let's say, the infrastructure side of your app. The next feature is deployed to the cloud, and this is essentially the step which deploys the code and deploys the files to your resources that you've already just provisioned. And then finally, we have the publish step, which is publishing to your organization, to the store. So this is publishing that app package so that an administrator can approve it, and then end users can discover your app within the Microsoft 365 tenant within Microsoft Teams. So first, I'm going to give you a bit of a walkthrough through a sample project that I can use to demonstrate how these 3 features work. So I'll switch over to Visual Studio Code, and I already have Teams Toolkit installed on the left-hand side here, and I can expand this. And so if this is the first time that you've seen Teams Toolkit, it's really easy to install. If you just go to the Extensions Marketplace and type in Teams Toolkit, you can see it already here that I've got it installed. Just open it up, click install. It'll install in a few seconds, and then the icon will be available for you to use, and that's it. It's quite simple. So let's go through the process of creating a new app. So click create a new app, create a new app again. It opens up the menu, allows me to choose different types of apps that I want to create. So I'm just going to create a tab. And I'm going to use JavaScript. I'm just going to put this in the default folder, and let's call this App Camp tab, and start the provisioning. And you can see that it's already created me a project. This is really quick. Let's just open this up. So we can see we've got a number of folders and files within this scaffolded project. So the most interesting folders is I've got the tabs folder. So this is where my source code is. I've actually got React components in there, HTML files. But I've also got templates folder. And in here, I have an app package as well. So this is going to be the package that we publish to our organization. But we've got an Azure folder as well that contains bicep files. And these bicep files contain the resources that we need to deploy for our tab to function. So straight away, as soon as I've created this app, Teams Toolkit has provided me with these templates that allow me to go from just starting from scratch, developing, to then actually running my app in Azure as well, without actually me needing to change anything. So let's quickly go through what that process looks like. And we'll go through the 3 steps of provisioning, deploying to the cloud, and then publishing to your organization. So first, let's look at provisioning. So one of the things that we need to do is we need to sign into our Azure account so that we can access our Azure subscription. So this links Toolkit to the subscription. You can see that that's actually shown in the UI, and then we can click the provision to cloud, which then goes through the steps where we can create a new resource group, or we can actually select one that already exists, select the region, and then just accept the warning there that yes, we want to deploy into Azure, and that there might be a little cost there. But we can see Teams Toolkit is providing us with the output. It's deploying these resources using the bicep files. And when that's finished, it provides us with a quick link and access directly to that resource group that's been created so that we can view the resources that Teams Toolkit has created for us. As we can see there, we've got a storage and identity there as well. So let's move on to the next step. Now that we've got our infrastructure provisioned, we want to deploy the code. So we can use the deploy to code option. Accept the warning to deploy that. And Teams Toolkit here is going to do the builds, do production builds, and then upload all of that code to our resources. After we've provisioned our infrastructure resources, deployed our code, the next step is to start to publish to our organization. So this is publishing the app package into Teams. So we can install for our organization, and this opens up a link to the admin portal. So Teams Toolkit has pushed this app to our organizational store, but it's blocked by default. So we need to actually publish this as administrators. So we can publish the app, and then that will become available for our end users to discover in the store, and then they can install that app into Teams for them to then use. And as we can see, we've got the tab there running in the Azure environment. Now, what I've shown you here today is actually module 5 of a Microsoft Learn path called Build and Deploy Apps for Microsoft Teams using Teams Toolkit for Visual Studio Code. Like I said, this is a great learning path if you're just starting out developing apps for Teams. It goes right through how to get started with Teams Toolkit through to building bots, building tabs, and then using the Teams JavaScript library as well to enhance your apps with extra features, as well as what we've just shown us, how to ultimately get your app running into Azure and into the hands of your end users. So if that interests you, then definitely check out the Learn path. If you go to aka.ms/learn/Teams Toolkit, that will take you to the Learn path. It shouldn't take long to go through. Each module is designed to go through in like 10-15 minutes. So if you've got an hour, you'll easily be able to do all of these, and it will get you on the certainly on the starting path to building apps for teams. Okay, Bob, back to you.
Thanks, Gary. Great demo. All right, so let's go ahead and give a tour of App Camp, which is actually Robbie and I collaborated on this whole. App Camp is another whole set of labs. So the Learn path that you just saw is a set of labs for Teams Toolkit. App Camp is a set of labs that are intended to help you learn end-to-end how to take an existing app and bring it into Teams. So if you want to follow along, aka.ms/app-camp is the URL. And you can just come here and you'll see that there's a ton of videos. So there's a business briefing with all the business aspects of selling in the App Store. Although this is equally applicable to the technical parts are also applicable for use inside of an enterprise. But we provide that. Also, here's the technical briefing from Robbie and me on much deeper dive on building Teams apps, and then a technical deep dive on monetizing. And then there's a bunch of labs, and there is a video for each lab that walks you through. So you can, kind of if something's not working, you might have forgot to click something, no worries, you can just watch that video and get all those details. And then there's the actual labs. And so we kind of have a couple of starting places for you, because the idea is you're going to start with an existing app. You're not going to start with an empty project. And this is, our feedback has been that this is the real world, right? There's a lot of customers and partners out there who already have an app and they don't want to rewrite it. So the difference between the A and B path is that the A path app is already connected to Azure Active Directory, in which case you're going to want to maintain that connection and take advantage of Teams single sign-on in your Teams app. Or maybe you're using some other auth system and you actually need to sort of make an identity merging of some sort and bring that in. So I'll show you right now, an example of, I'm just going to show the A path. It wants me to log in, and it's not a fancy app, but basically it is using the venerable Northwind database. And so you can see I can come in here and view all my orders, and I can go into an order and see all the details of what was ordered. I can also go into products, view the product categories, go into the products in the category, the whole thing. And if you may or may not have seen, how long has this database been around, Rabia? It seems like forever.
Oh, yeah. 90s.
Yeah,
I think.
yeah, it's really, yeah, right. Actually, if you look, go ahead. The orders, the dates are from 1996, and I think we have to fix the formatting on that screen. But anyway, in the first lab, you set up this app, and it's not in Teams. In fact, it's not Microsoft except for Azure AD part. It's written in vanilla JavaScript with an Express server in the background. So it's trying to be welcoming to everyone, including people who maybe haven't been too familiar with Microsoft stuff before. And then in the second lab, we bring that same app into Teams. And the styling changes, but the functionality is the same, and everything is here, and I can kind of browse around, but now the app is right inside of Teams. So this, we didn't have to throw away any of the old code. All the code is still there. We added a couple of things like styling the page a little bit differently to fit in with Teams in the single sign-on piece, but otherwise it's all the same app. And then there are these extended labs. So I'll show you what these do, and then we'll take a peek at some of the code. So once you've kind of gotten to the point of what I just showed you, which is called a personal tab, so it's just one view that you can access from the sidebar in Teams. Now you can actually start building all these other things on top of it in whatever order you wish. Kind of choose your own adventure. So let me show a couple of those now. One of them is a configurable tab. So suppose I'm in a team and we're the beverages team and we're actually working on the beverages for Northwind, and somebody asks me to check the inventory. Oh, it looks like, isn't the chai inventory kind of low? Well, let me go check. So if all I did was implement the personal tab, I'd have to go to the app, go to Northwind, and then go and find the beverages. And there's the number, right? But that's a lot of clicking. So let's see what we can do now with a configurable tab. I can come in here and essentially do the navigation once for my whole team. I'm going to come in here to the plus sign, add the tab for Northwind orders, and I get to configure the tab to show a specific product category. So I'll choose beverages, and then I'll post to the channel about the tab. And this will bring a beverages tab into my team. So now instead of navigating all the way over to another application and then finding the information again inside of that application, all they have to do is click beverages. That easy. And that easy to get back to the conversation. In fact, you can even click the little chat button here and discuss while you're actually using the application. So that's what's possible with the configurable tab. Next, let's talk about deep linking into your application. For instance, suppose I'm looking at this order right here. I might want to insert a link to this order, but not just anywhere, this order in Teams, pointing to Teams specifically. And at that point, I'm going to want to use what's called a deep link. So you could send this out in an email. You could put it inside of the non-Teams view of your app. But to keep it simple here, we're just going to go ahead and copy it to the clipboard and come in here, and you'll see what it's going to do is it's going to open up Microsoft Teams, and then it's going to bring me into the app and directly back to that order. Another thing you'll learn is how to use a dialogue or a task module, and use that in your app. And here we're just adding some notes to the order, right? But again, this is just a web page. So if you're kind of looking at this, the little dialog box here is just a web page that we're hosting in the app, and you can learn how to expose that in a dialog. Finally, there's the ability to there's actually more than this, but we have a whole thing around selling your app in Teams, but there's also a message extension. So users can access your app from where they're typing in a conversation and bring in business data from your app. So I can come in here and search for a product, and this is going to pull that right out of the Northwind database. And Robbie built this lab. I love it because now imagine that Tony's going to go and look for the chai and check on the stock, and maybe he's on his phone, and rather than go into the inventory system or switch context right in the conversation, he can update the stock level. If you want to try all this, go to aka.ms/app-camp. You'll need a free Microsoft 365 tenant. And so if you didn't know this, you can get a developer tenant for free. You get 25 users, test users that you can set up, and you can go ahead and do all these labs and do your own development in there, and it doesn't cost you anything. You also need Node.js and a code editor and a tunneling program called ngrok, which allows that when the Teams bot calls come in, or when any of the calls come in from the internet, they get to your local service where you're debugging your code. So that is the overall of App Camp. But we have some big news today, which is that Robbie has built a new lab, which actually shows how you can take the App Camp material and go, or any app, and go beyond Microsoft Teams. So I'll turn it over to Rabia now to show off her good work on this new lab.
Thanks so much, Bob. Right, so really excited because we are announcing this new lab that we're adding more labs, but this is the first time we're going to be presenting about this new lab, which is extending the Teams app to Outlook and Microsoft 365 app, previously called Office app. So I'm just gonna go ahead and cut to demo because demo gods have been angry. I think we need a little bit of demo to work today. So let's go ahead and do that. So this is what you will be building in this lab. First step would be saying you already saw Bob's My Orders personal tab. The same tab that works on Teams will now work on your Outlook. So if you go ahead and open up the app from the flyout, you can see that the same app with a different styling, a bit of theming, shows up in Outlook. And the same thing at the Microsoft 365 app, previously called Office app. As you can see here, the theming has changed a bit, but you have this application running across three different Microsoft products, and that's exciting. So in your lab, you're going to do this, but not just that. You will also integrate these products' main native capabilities. Like for Teams, you would add chat. For example, you're in the orders and you want to chat about it with someone, maybe a vendor. You can actually go ahead and use the scenario. So you will be building this out. And when you talk about Outlook, the first thing you do, I mean, the main capability or the hero capability of Outlook is email. So if you go to orders, you can see that instead of chat, it will be mail. And you will be building this based on the capabilities that is supported by these products. So as you can see here, instead of chat, we opened up a new composed email with all the details filled in. And if you go to Office, Microsoft 365 app, you would see that there is no capability here, chat or mail, because it's not supported. So that's another good thing you're going to learn in this lab, is that how can you go ahead and use the Teams JavaScript library to check what capabilities are supported in your host product, for example, whether it's Outlook or Teams, and then you will go ahead and call these APIs. So this is going to be beneficial for you. But you might be thinking, okay, really, like having your application in three different areas, what is it really solving, right? So I'm just going to take you through some of these benefits in the next slide. So right, so first of all, app discovery. Now that's a key thing. Your app showing in more places than one could be a good thing. Meeting where the users are, whether they are in Teams or Outlook, it's a good thing for them to find out, oh, hey, this can actually reduce the time I work on this thing. And to be honest with you folks, I have not really seen top leadership or CEO kind of folks chatting all the time on Teams, or adding you to group chats and things like that. They're mostly on Outlook. They send emails most of the time. Now imagine one day the leaders in your organization finding out your app and actually using it, sending you an email saying, hey, this is actually pretty useful. Now, as a developer, that is probably really good, impactful stuff. So that's one of the benefit. And next, I'm not forgetting the IT admins who do all the work of maintaining, managing apps. If you are one of them, you could have different the same application show up in different surfaces, but only have to manage one app. So I guess that is also another benefit. And the third benefit, and the most important benefit, is how it is easier for end users to use it, because now it's more connected. So the environment in which they're working in, whether it's Teams or Outlook, they can actually get work done because they don't really have to switch context and go to Teams or go to their website and get information like that message extension demo that Bob showed. You could actually have that working in Outlook. So you could grab that, send it to someone, and they could update the stock as well. So really beneficial. They really don't have to switch, copy links. All that mess is kind of solved. And it's also one other important aspect is if your users know how to navigate application in Teams, they find it easier to switch to another product and find the same UI, the same, the business process, everything captured. And they don't really have to relearn a new system. So this would encourage them to go ahead and use your application in more than one places. I'm just going to show you where this new lab is in our website. So if you go to extended labs on top, and come right down to extend your Teams app to Outlook and Microsoft 365, you will see this is where the new lab is.
Next, I want to kind of give a little bit of a preview. So I'm really excited. I'm actually going to get to lead a workshop with my friend Michael Panzaroli. Aicha Bosch will be there. Dan Hualin will be there for a build pre-day workshop. And so I've been working on the labs for this, and they kind of follow this same idea of extending an app that you already have, maybe in Azure, probably in Azure, but using a little bit of a different approach. And the idea here is so these will be new labs that we'll release at Build, so that you can do them even if you don't make it to Build, but I hope you do. And it could be great to meet some of you folks and work side by side with you. So the idea here is that you have a web service, and everybody has web services inside their company, in the cloud, public web services, private web services. So these labs are about building message extensions that bring your app right into the conversation. And so let me kind of show you what these are. Message extensions, there's a bunch of places where you can extend the user interface. You can type, you can do it in the compose box. You can actually click on a message and take action on the message, or you can type up in the command bar to access the message extension. And the part of the reason we chose this is because, as we've been going and growing the Teams application community, if you will, an ecosystem, we found that these are actually one of the most popular with users. This is one of the most popular features that gets people back to using the app over and over again every day. So what I'd like to do now is kind of give you a little preview of what these labs, of what people will build in the labs, and what will be allowing everyone to take advantage of at Build. So I'm going to start, and then I'm going to show a little bit of the code, because we haven't seen any code now, and that's a problem, right? So the first thing is that we're using the public web service for the Northwind database. So it turns out that there's a web service out there. So this shows you how to just take any REST API and just wrap it up in a message extension. So it's similar to the one that Robbie has started, but in this case, we are using Teams Toolkit. So the theory is the web service is there. We're going to build a small little application that kind of wraps around the web service and brings the business data into Microsoft Teams. So here it is, and I can send this adaptive card. You'll learn about adaptive cards as part of this process. Now, that's a fine thing, but the reality is that your enterprise web service is probably secured. It's probably authenticated. And so here's the other option, the next lab, or one of the labs. We're not sure what order they're going to be in. We're actually going to go to your personal contacts. So this requires a call to the Microsoft Graph. And we're going to go in and let me just do a search here. And I'll just, I don't have a lot of test data. And it's like, suppose I guess the business scenario would be here. I'm working with Megan, and this particular supplier isn't in the system yet. So, but they are in my personal contacts. So here's all my personal contacts that have the letter A. And, I can type a little more and filter it down. And go ahead and put this in. And we made this card simple because it's just a lab and we don't want people to have to do a bunch of busy work, but you could obviously make a fancier card like the other one. So that's the second message extension. The third one, and we get into some that are not as well known, is called an action message extension. So here is the action, right? And rather than search for something, I can actually have a little bit of a richer interaction. So what we're doing here is this is an adaptive card hosted in a dialog, and we're calling an OpenAI model running in Azure. You could also use the OpenAI's public platform service, but this is actually Azure OpenAI. And so please welcome the webcast audience. And I can generate a response and bang, insert that into the chat stream. Another place that I could put a message extension is responding to a message. So here, Megan is trying to organize a trip to our favorite lunchtime spot for lunch. And so I can come in here and do an AI reply. And again, the app will launch a dialogue with an adaptive card. And as we move through these, you're actually going to see different adaptive cards. It's just the user doesn't quite realize it. So if I want to go to lunch, then I'll agree, right? But maybe I can't make it today, and I want a nice polite decline, right? Now, what happened when I clicked generate was it actually went back to the app and generated the response and put a new adaptive card in the dialogue. And user didn't really know that, but you could build all kinds of dialogue flows this way. Maybe you want a poem about going to lunch at Julio's, right? Or maybe I want a joke, and I have to say the OpenAI jokes are not really that funny a lot of times, but at least it's not offensive, right? I asked it to do a dad joke, so there we go, and now it will send that response. So take a look at the schema for this, and I think I'll show some of the schemas from the other App Camp labs as well. This is the manifest, and so this is the thing. This is the one thing that you have to create that makes it uniquely a Teams app or a Microsoft 365 app, showing the goodness that Robbie demoed. At first, you can see there's a bunch of information about the app itself, the developer information, and all of this is going to get shown actually inside of, if I go into the app itself, and well, I guess I'm not going to see it here, but these are the types of things that show up here in the about of the app. This is the other app, but anyway, the icons to use, description, and then if I had bots, they would go here. Compose extensions was the old word for message extensions, and here you can see this is the one that finds a Northwind supplier, right? Then this is the one that searches your contacts list. I got to fix this. The ID is not so relevant. This is the one that generates a message, right? And so so you're setting these things up, and then inside of the code, we're actually going to respond to these. So there's a little, you actually need to use the bot framework to get these messages. And so, for instance, when somebody does a query, it's going to call this function. And we're going to sort of look at it and say, is this for the suppliers or the contacts? And then we're going to go get the information and update. Or here's the somebody selected an item in the query, and they're going to go here. Or somebody wants to do an action message extension. So we're going to go ahead and fetch the dialogue that's going to be displayed, and that kind of a thing. And then there's one more type, which is called a link unfurling. And it's kind of a funny name, but if you think about links, if you think about a flag unfurling, it'll probably make more sense. Let me come back to the chat with Megan. So I'm going to paste this in, and yes, the supplier not found, but if I put in a valid supplier ID, it will actually unfurl the message for me. So the link for me. So basically you get to create a little card. And in this case, it's going to go look up that supplier. So this is a brilliant way to kind of bring people into your app, because maybe you can intercept your domain name. So any link to your website or to an internal website that people might share with their colleague, maybe they don't know about the Teams functionality. You can intercept that when they share it with colleagues in Teams and have your own custom card show up that brings them into your app in Teams. So it's a great way, even if people don't know that you've added a Teams app to your product or to your internal site. Now you can actually let them know when they go to share it. Oh yeah, it's right here in Teams using these cards. So, and then that's also here in the app manifest. So let me kind of flip back to slides quickly, and we'll leave a little bit of time for Q&A. So it's the first call to action is please visit AppCamp, aka.ms/app-camp. This is where all the labs are, including the future labs will be there that I just showed at the end, and all the labs about moving your tab, moving your website over to Teams. Everything that Robbie has showed you with a new lab is all at that location, aka.ms/app-camp. We also have, through the courtesy of our colleagues in the Teams ecosystem team, we actually have they've actually offered to support ISVs who are building apps, and they're specifically looking for software vendors who want to sell in the App Store, which adds another layer to this because now you're also doing an e-commerce aspect. And so, simple little form that you can fill out at aka.ms/teamsappcamp/survey. And they'll get back to you. And if you need any help along the way of getting your app built and getting it into the App Store, that's for you. Also, the Learn path now this is all Teams Toolkit, so it's assumed that you're starting a new app. Gary at least tried to show that with his internet connection not helping so much. But that is right here at akms/learn-ttk. And then we also have live streams and a YouTube channel where we can all work together. So that's all I got. Robbie, any final comments? And we can check and see if there's any questions outstanding.
Yeah, I was checking that.
Lots of bots and learning ways to integrate. So the Cyber Squirrel is on. That's cool. I love Cyber Squirrel. Let's see. Lots of bots and leaning towards integrate them with ChatGPT and Teams would be wonderful. Yeah, everybody is excited about the new AI features, and turns out that it was not really a lot of code to do that. Let's see what else is. Maybe I'll show a little sample of the code if we. Robbie, do you see other questions jumping out at you here?
Just checking.
Let me show the core of that. The OpenAI part is only a few lines of code, really. It's not so bad at all. Right here we are generating a prompt for if I'm responding to the message about Julio's, it's just going to say, please generate a message, an agreeable response to the following message, right? And then down here, it just calls this. The whole code fits right on one page, right? It's calling the OpenAI service, passing in the API key, and getting back the response to that prompt. It's so easy and so powerful. Any other questions or comments? Let me look back here. Hopefully this was valuable for people. I think, for a long time I've been thinking that Azure is like really the sweet spot, or Azure developers are in a sweet position to build these apps because, first of all, they're all, they're in Azure, they're generally available on the internet, so that teams can get to them and so that the Teams users can get to them. And a lot of times they already use Azure AD. And that is something that I found a lot of developers, that could be the biggest challenge for them, is figuring out if they have some other auth system, how do they provide a nice streamlined single sign-on experience for users in Teams who are logged into Azure AD. And we do have a strategy for that, but it's a heavier lift. And what I notice is a lot of Azure solutions are already using Azure's native. Turns out Azure's native auth system is the same as Teams. So it's Azure AD, right? So it just kind of makes everything a lot easier.
So, Bob, Arjun had a question about bringing message extension feature in Outlook.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it actually is at the moment, even our demo, it would work in Outlook. The only thing you need to keep in mind is not just a manifest update, you'll need to configure the bot channels for Outlook, um, which I think should be captured in one of our labs. But if it's not the case, then we would update the notes.
Here's a quick demo of a message extension working in Outlook. You can see it's a search message extension, and we can go ahead and insert that business data into an email. The UI is changing a little bit. The button to add the message extension is actually moved to the top of the screen, but otherwise it looks a lot like this. And you can see that now the recipient of this email can even take action using the adaptive card. Thank you all for joining us, and please check out the replay, check out the other videos, and do the labs, and leave comments. Thanks so much.
Thanks, everyone.